Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome John Solomon, editor at the Washington Times.
All right. Good morning. Good to be here with you today. I have the privilege of being with a panel here today to discuss what I think is one of the defining issues of our time, and that is, where are we going to set the line as a country between a government that rightfully protects us against some very serious threats, terrorism, foreign tyranny, and a government that has the capability to invade our privacy and potentially infringe on our liberty. And the panel we have today is going to do a great job of exploring those issues for you. I'm going to introduce them in a second, but before I do, I just wanted to make one other mention here. Those who value security have a very important argument to make. Those who value privacy have a very important argument to make, and I think we live in a troubling time that will challenge all of us to think about this more than just today. All right, let me get right to the panelists. The Honorable Jim Gilmore served as the 68th governor of Virginia, my home state, and the 58th chairman of the Republican National Committee. Today he works as the president of Free Congress and American Opportunity, where he focuses on full employment through smart tax policy, building healthy communities through innovative urban and transportation policies, and charting a new path forward on foreign policy. During his tenure in Virginia, he did a lot of remarkable things. Among them, he reduced the property tax on cars by 70%. Some of you remember that. He increased funding for historically black colleges, created 200,000 new jobs in Virginia, and was the first chief executive in the United States to create a cabinet-level position focused just on technology, one of the issues we're going to talk about today. He's a veteran of the Army. In fact, he was an Army intelligence officer, something that I think will draw upon his experience today. And back in 1999 through 2003, he served as the chairman of a congressional panel that became known as the Gilmore Commission that assessed America's capabilities to fight terrorism. Were we ready before 9/11? Were we ready after 9/11? Governor, welcome here. All right, our next panelist is someone you've seen on radio and television testifying before Congress. You've probably read some of his books, the Honorable Bruce Fein. Bruce is here today. He served as both Associate Deputy Attorney General and General Counsel to the FCC during the Reagan years. He was also the Research Director for Republicans on the Joint Congressional Committee on Covert Arms Sales to Iran, and on the American Bar Association's American Bar Association's Committee on Presidential Signing Statements. He's been a visiting fellow at the Heritage Foundation, a scholar at AEI. He has advised numerous countries on constitutional reform, including South Africa, Hungary, and Russia. He's regularly called to testify, as I mentioned, before Congress. And he's a founding member of Bruce Fein and Associates, a law corporation, and also the founder of the Litchfield Group, a public advocacy organization. Bruce, come on board here. All right. Now, this last guy I'm going to bring up, I'm pretty sure, doesn't need a pair of bifocals like I do to read my cue cards today. He's Charlie Kirk. He's 20 years old, and he's the founder. All right, he's got a fan club. Watch Twitter light up now. All right. So Charlie's the founder and executive director of TurningPoint USA, a national student movement dedicated to educating young people about the importance of fiscal responsibility, free markets, and capitalism. In less than a year, Charlie has grown TurningPoint USA from nothing to having representation in over 100 high schools and college campuses across the country. He's appeared on Fox News over 60 times, he tells me, and his work has appeared in many publications across the country as well. So Charlie, come aboard. All right. Very good. All right, I'm going to walk over to the conversation pit here in a second, and as I do, we're going to listen to someone that's been in the news a little bit lately.
Talk a little bit about how the American surveillance state actually functions. Does it target the actions of Americans?
NSA and the intelligence community in general is focused on getting intelligence wherever it can by any means possible that it believes on the grounds of sort of a self-certification that they serve the national interest. Originally, we saw that focus very narrowly tailored as foreign intelligence gathered overseas. Now, increasingly, we see that it's happening domestically. And to do that, the NSA specifically targets the communications of everyone. It ingests them by default. It collects them in its system, and it filters them, and it analyzes them, and it measures them, and it stores them for periods of time, simply because that's the easiest, most efficient, and most valuable way to achieve these ends. So while they may be intending to target someone associated with a foreign government or someone that they suspect of terrorism, they're collecting your communications to do so. Any analyst at any time can target anyone, any selector, anywhere. Where those communications will be picked up depends on the range of the sensor networks and the authorities that that analyst is empowered with. Not all analysts have the ability to target everything, but I, sitting at my desk, certainly had the authorities to wiretap anyone, from you or your accountant to a federal judge to even the president if I had a personal email.
Well, that's a dramatic statement, something about our times today, I guess. Before we start, let me just mention one thing. If you want to tweet some questions, we'll try to bring some of those up here later in the panel. To do so, you got to go to, you tweet at Cpac News and send it to the hashtag Solomon Panel, S-O-L-O-M-O-N panel. Got a little plug-in from my family there. All right. Bruce, let me start with you. You just heard what Edward Snowden said. You represented his family, I believe his father, last year for a period of time before he fled to Russia. In your mind, is he a traitor to the nation, or is he a hero defending the Constitution?
Well, I think he's more in the line of a patriot that Thomas Paine described as someone who saves his country from his government. Now, what Mr. Snowden said was, if anything, an understatement. All of you in the audience, all of us up here, all members of the Senate and the House, including the Senate Intelligence Committee, have had all of their telephony metadata, whether it's a domestic call or international call, since May of 2006, collected and stored in a database, without any suspicion at all that our phone information is related to foreign intelligence, international terrorism, or otherwise. It's just a staggering database. Moreover, according to the NSA's own testimony, they intended to keep this massive collection, I call it the Mass Associational Tracking Program, secret from the American people forever. The program has no endpoint to it. It could last for our lifetimes and beyond. Over 8 years, according to 2 panels selected by President Obama, the program has foiled 0 international terrorism plots. It's produced basically nothing. And the justification is that, according to the NSA operators, it gives us a confidence level that there, in fact, is no connection between all of you in the audience and international terrorism. That is, now surveillance is authorized not because there's suspected wrongdoing, but because there isn't any suspected wrongdoing. They want confirmation of that sort. But I think that shows how far we have come from the original meaning of the Fourth Amendment, which was captured in a statement that it's actually addressed by William Pitt the Elder, who made to the British Parliament in 1763. The poorest man in his castle may bid defiance to all the forces of the crown. It may be frail, the roof may shake, the wind may blow through it, the storms may enter, the rains may enter, the King of England cannot enter. All his forces dare not cross the threshold of the ruined tenement. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the spirit of the Fourth Amendment that we have totally lost. The default position in the United States, in the eyes of the Founding Fathers, was our right to be let alone from any government intrusion unless there was some reasonable grounds, styled typically probable cause, to believe we were connected with some kind of wrongdoing. We don't have to give a reason to be left alone. It's our right because we're human beings. It's the government that needs to give a reason why it can disturb that right. And when they're collecting telephony metadata on everyone in the room forever, that does not satisfy the Fourth Amendment.
All right, Governor, I saw you nodding your head, maybe you're shaking it perhaps. You may have a little different view. What do you think of what Snowden did?
Talking about Edward Snowden?
Yes, sir.
Which is something that, that Bruce really didn't address here, the question of Edward Snowden. But I'm going to address it. But first thing I'm going to do is I want to be sure that everybody in this room understands where I've come from in the past. I've been the governor of Virginia. I was the governor of Virginia during the 9/11 attack. I know very well what this is about. When I was the chairman of the advisory panel on Homeland Security and terrorism, I actually spoke out against the accumulation of potential accumulation of this kind of data. When John Poindexter talked about a program called Total Information Awareness, I condemned it publicly. I was a person who put into the official reports of the Congress on the question of terrorism, homeland security, that the preservation of our civil freedoms was the entire game in the post-9/11 world. As governor of Virginia, I even vetoed red light bills to make sure that people weren't being watched out on their own streets. But that's not the question. The question here is Edward Snowden. This is Edward Snowden. This is a picture of the New York Post with Edward Snowden on the front cover. Edward Snowden is a traitor. Edward Snowden is a traitor and a coward. The fact is that Edward Snowden betrayed his trust. The people of the United States gave Edward Snowden a position to have access to confidential information. They gave him a special high clearance of compartmentalized information, special clearance, which he then violated. He hid the fact that he was doing these things, and even there are some allegations that he obtained this information through trickery. When the time came for him to flee, as a coward would, he told his superiors that he was going to go to the mainland for some kind of medical treatment, when in fact he went the opposite way and went to Hong Kong, where he then proceeded to expose this information, at least to the press, if not to the Chinese. And then at a later time, he goes off to Russia in order to make common cause with this Stalinist thug who today is doing something right now that's unacceptable in the Ukraine. The definition of treason, which is set out in the Constitution, is someone who makes common cause with our enemies, someone who gives aid and comfort to our enemies and abides with our enemies. And the fact is that Edward Snowden does that, remains doing it to this day. He is a traitor. He should return to the United States with the courage of his convictions, someone who's prepared to face the music, go before a jury of his peers, and then make his case, and then see what the jury says. They could acquit him, or a judge could take these concerns that Bruce has expressed into consideration. But the law must be upheld, and particularly someone who has had this kind of trust.
If I could respond, John, I need to.
He is a traitor.
All right, before I get back to you, Bruce, I want to hear from Charlie, because he comes from a younger generation, and you've just heard two very polar descriptions of Edward Snowden: traitor, coward, patriot. What do kids in your generation view Edward Snowden as?
Well, it's interesting. Edward Snowden, for those of you that don't know, is going to be speaking at the South by Southwest conference on Monday in Austin, Texas, via Skype telecom from Russia. But I don't think young people look at him whether as a patriot or a traitor, but rather with intrigue of what he revealed. Every single tweet, every single Snapchat, every single text message, call is being stored, collected, and analyzed. And when we're in a culture where what you believe is being used against you in the IRS, being weaponized if you're a conservative, that should worry every single person in this room. Every single person.
All right, Bruce, let me ask you.
First,
if he's
need
a traitor,
to respond.
Okay, let me just ask you, if he's a traitor, would you defend him, and how would you defend him if he comes back?
Well, the government has not charged Mr. Snowden with treason, despite your conviction without a trial yet. That has accused him of Espionage Act violations, which I believe, when a citizen exposes government wrongdoing, like violations of the Constitution, it would be unconstitutional to make that a crime. We don't have an adjudication of that because Mr. Snowden has not been even formally indicted by a grand jury. But I want all the audience to know the federal government has not, despite its hostility to Mr. Snowden, accused him of treason as what you charged. Secondly, with regard to the rule of law, let's examine exactly the circumstances in which Mr. Snowden made his revelations. The Senate Intelligence Committee and the House for years had known of this secret surveillance program that is now brought forth through Mr. Snowden's abilities, a lawsuit amongst others brought by Senator Rand Paul, in which I was instrumental in bringing the lawsuit, because now we know. The NSA intended to make this program secret forever. In March, before the revelations of last year, before the Senate Intelligence Committee, the Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, was asked by Senator Ron Wyden, "Are you collecting data on millions of Americans?" Moreover, Senator Wyden had issued that question to Mr. Clapper 24 hours in advance, so he could deliberate on it. It wasn't an ambuscade. And Mr. Clapper answered no, a clearly seeming perjurious statement. He later sought to defend it on television as the least untruthful assertion he could make, consistent with his duties. Now, you're talking about the rule of law. In a democracy, the people have a right to know what their government is doing because we get to decide what the policy is going to be. And when the Snowden revelations came forth, the American people have forced changes from what the NSA was doing, not the ones that I would believe are more comprehensive, only because Mr. Snowden's revelations. We couldn't even file a suit that Rand Paul did without the revelations, because before that, when it was speculation as to what the NSA was doing, we were thrown out of court. Well, you're just guessing that the government is doing this to you. And he made rule of law function, which wasn't functioning before that time. And what does it say about all the members of the Senate Intelligence Committee who didn't have the courage to do what a 29-year-old had to do for them? And it is especially outrageous. They had, as you point out, a duty to uphold and defend the Constitution, including the Fourth Amendment, which they were not doing. In addition, unlike Mr. Snowden, they enjoyed the speech or debate clause of Article 1, Section 6, which in the Mike Gravel Supreme Court case established the doctrine that every member of Congress can disclose anything in the course of their legislative duty, free from worry of executive retaliation. Senator Gravel read 47 classified volumes of the Pentagon Papers into the public record. He was investigated by the Nixon administration for an Espionage Act violation. The Supreme Court said, no, that's off limits. The Constitution gives this immunity to embolden vigorous congressional oversight, and that was the default position. And I underscore, if it wasn't for Edward Snowden, we would not be having this conversation today. We wouldn't be having the debates over the Fourth Amendment, which is the earmark of what democracy is about.
All right, we know what sort of defense he's going to get. Governor Gilmore, Bruce said earlier, there's not been a single attack stopped by the NSA program and the things that we're doing in government today. Do you know of anything that you're aware of where we stopped an attack because of the gathering of this information? I think the important, first of all, let me also say that I didn't say that he was charged with treason. I'm saying he should be charged with treason. And as far as the Espionage Act goes, he is charged with that direct violation of the Espionage Act. And Rand Paul, actually Ron Paul has said that he should have amnesty. Rand Paul has said he should have a light sentence. This is very wrong-headed. We have to underscore the rule of law and the obligations and trust that we place in people who have security clearances and who work in the security field. Now, to the question that Bruce has raised, the question of whether or not this kind of problem justifies all of this or not. Folks, I have to tell you, I've been the governor during the 9/11 attack. I've been in the Pentagon, in the smoking hole of the Pentagon. When I was there, I looked around at all the rubble and I said, this is a terrible thing. There were people here. And they said, yes, you're within 30 feet of people's pieces who are underneath all of this rubble here right now. And over the past 10 years since that time, we've seen a very serious problem of the growth of the attacks on this country and the potential danger to this country, the significance of people who are not connected to the state, who can do a cyber attack, who can do an explosion in order to intimidate our civil activities like we see in Boston. The dangers are significant, and I have to tell you that there will be another attack on the United States. There simply will be. And our duty here is to prepare this country and to protect it to the greatest extent it can, consistent with our civil freedoms. Now, we're Americans. We don't have to trade this off. We can do both. We can secure this nation and we can preserve the civil freedoms of the American people. And that has to be our goal and our objective.
But one of the things
Bruce, let me come back. I want to come to Charlie for a second. So, Charlie, you emanate from the first generation that grew up with Facebook and Twitter. You live your lives on the internet all day long. Is your generation just reconciled to the fact that when they get up in the morning, the government's going to be collecting their phone records and going to be collecting the internet, and that's just part of being an American in the 21st century?
Hardly. So people all the time ask me, well, Charlie, why do young people care about the NSA? They tweet and Facebook everything. Are they okay with it? And the way I answer that is, well, young people have passwords on their iPhones, don't they? And into their Facebook accounts and their Twitter accounts. There is a fine line between what you tweet, post, and make public and what is behind a closed veil. There is a secrecy line that the government has crossed, especially with the younger generation. And there is information that we hold on these accounts, whether it be Twitter, Facebook, our personal iPhone, that the government has overreached, taken, cataloged, and hopefully is not going to be used against us in the future. So I say it is an absolute opportunity for conservative activists to engage young people in this conversation. And it's much more of a natural fit for the limited government advocates. So let's look at the left. When Barack Obama said, oh, the NSA is a problem, I'm going to make all these changes, 10 minutes later he went, go sign up for healthcare.gov. Now what's wrong with that picture? Right? So exactly, right? So he's saying, I'm going to rein in all the NSA. By the way, go to a website and give me all your information. I mean, give me a break, right? It's a easy sales pitch for conservative activists to be able to make the limited government case. And yes, privacy matters a lot to young people. Otherwise, why would we have passwords and all this stuff that we're doing?
Bruce, let me turn the tables on you for a second. You defend what Edward Snowden did. If I told you I had talked to several intelligence officers who said that assets in the field and methods that they were using, unrelated to what the NSA was doing, was harmed by revelations he made, the volume of revelations he made. How do you respond to that charge, and should he have used more judgment in what he released?
Before I answer that, I need to go back to Governor Gilmore's statement about Ed Snowden. He, however, I think ignores the more rampant lawlessness, which is government violating the rule of law, which he seems to be indifferent about. He hasn't said at all James Clapper should be indicted for perjury for lying to Congress and the American people.
Governor, should he?
He hasn't. It's total silence. And what about the rampant unconstitutional action of the president?
You got to give him a chance, or there won't be.
I want to complete my litany,
right,
and then you respond, because that's just one example. We have a president who claims and has used the authority on 4 occasions, planning a 5th, to kill any American citizen that he unilaterally decides in secret is an imminent danger. He's got a 5th on his list. That's due process of law? That sounds like Litvinenko and Putin sending poison to London. He sends people to Guantanamo Bay on his say-so alone. You're conspiring with an associated force of Al-Qaeda. There's no due process whatsoever. The surveillance program is another example. He decides he doesn't want to faithfully execute the laws. He says, I don't like the laws against immigration. I don't want to force those. I don't like the laws against marijuana. I don't want to force those. I don't like the laws against torture. I don't want to enforce those. All of these examples of government lawlessness, total silence on Governor Gilmore's side, and when the government becomes a lawbreaker, it invites every man and woman to become a law unto themselves.
All right, Governor, no more silence. Can you answer Bruce's question?
Well, you know, Bruce, I've been on the front lines of this battle. I've been an intelligence agent during the Cold War in Germany. I had the secret clearances. I had an opportunity to work on behalf of my country. I was the governor during the 9/11 attack. I've seen the attack. I've been on the front lines, and frankly, I resent your implication that maybe I don't have any interest in the civil freedoms of this country. And here's the answer. The answer is that we need to have proper oversight. We need to have proper laws. If people are going to misuse this data or go too far, then they need to be prosecuted. There needs to be proper oversight by the Congress. We need to have those kinds of things. But to dismantle the defense of this nation in a time of maximum danger to this country is not responsible. Now, here's what they're doing. Here's what they're doing. They have the opportunity. They have the opportunity to take this data and actually target a person that they know from other sources, human intelligence or other communications intelligence, that a person is a potential danger to this country overseas. And then they are in a position to find out who that person is talking to in this country. And then they also have an opportunity to see who that person is talking to and to develop investigatory techniques against the possibility of attacks in this country. The fact is that the enemy may not yet be successful in building people in this country that can attack this country, but they would aspire to do that. They would like to do that. And it's our responsibility to make sure that our authorities are enabled to do their job consistent with the law. We can do both of these things, and we can do them properly. Edward Snowden, by revealing that kind of information, has substantially weakened this country against the direct enemies of this country, which is the definition of treason under the Constitution, and a direct violation of the laws of espionage of this country. And frankly, he ought to come back and not be a coward and hang around in Russia with people who are are not really in favor of the successes of this country, he should return to this country and make his case before a jury of his peers. People have done civil disobedience for years and many years in this country. Martin Luther King who had civil disobedience. There have been others who have civil disobedience. And they come back and they face the music and they face the justice and they make their case not only to the court but to the American people. Edward Snowden has not done that, and that is why he's not only, in my judgment, a traitor, he is also a coward.
All right, we got a restless crowd here. I'm going to
just really quick.
Okay.
let me do one thing before I go to you, Charlie. Let's have a show of hands in the room. Who thinks they're safer here today because of the data that the NSA is collecting? Show of hands. All right, Governor, this is one of your hometown crowds. Has something changed? Do we need to bring Dick Cheney back up on stage and have another speech about the axis of evil, or has the public moved?
Well, I think the key difference is that there's a tendency here, and Bruce is guilty of this, of trying to make this black and white. It is a mistake for the American people to believe that in order to be protective of our civil freedoms and our freedoms as Americans, we must sacrifice the security of this nation. That is not true, and I'll tell you, there is danger ahead, substantial danger that is coming. And the fact is that we have to put ourselves in a position where we can defend ourselves consistent with the law and consistent with the values of our nation. We can do these things. We are Americans. We can do both. We don't have to rely upon a man who takes it upon himself to make the decisions. Then maybe he's smarter than anybody else, and he has the ability to betray his trust, betray his security clearances, lie to his superiors, go to foreign countries, and betray this nation. That is not consistent with American values.
I think you have the
Hang on,
facts
Bruce, hang on,
upside down. Let me
Charlie's been brimming with some energy here. I want to hear what he has to say. Go ahead, Charlie.
It's interesting that you say, and I want to add an unfortunate realistic reality here, and that's, I think there's a difference between a traitor to our country and a traitor to what they call an enemy of the administration. Let's think about this right now. And I want to add an element. Is Ted Cruz viewed as an enemy right now to many people? No. Is Catherine Engelbrecht from True the Vote? Patriots all across the country are being targeted by the IRS. And I want to reinforce this because of their beliefs. There are congressional hearings because of that. And in the same sentence, are we going to say it's okay that we can spy on other enemies? But is the enemy being redefined right now by this government? And we need to, with hesitation, say conservatives are under attack and limited government advocates are under attack. And we need to understand that it sounds really good, with all possible due respect, that we're going to target our enemies, foreign and domestic, and prevent terrorism. But in a culture where what you believe in is under attack, especially by this administration, we have to be very, very careful by using that kind of rhetoric.
And I think what Governor Gilmore, I think, doesn't understand is that the Fourth Amendment stands for the proposition that we take risks that unfree countries don't take because we care about liberty. It's what Thomas Jefferson said: when the government fears the people, you have liberty. When the people fear the government, you have tyranny, right? That's what it means to be an American. And it's the object in a republic for the people to censure the government. The government doesn't censure the people. And as regards who speaks for the American people, it was this intelligence community says American people are too stupid to know what safety measures are required. That's why we can't tell them what we're doing out there. When Edward Snowden revealed what was going on, the American people rallied behind his concept of what the law ought to be, not the intelligence community and Mr. Gilmore.
All right, Governor.
John, John, I've been a trial defense lawyer. I have, in fact, made motions under the Fourth Amendment, which I have won on behalf of clients. I've been an elected prosecutor and prosecuted people. I've been the Attorney General of Virginia, and I think I understand better than anybody what the Fourth Amendment is really all about and what it really means and how it really works. Now, I lie. I don't think so. I don't think so. But the fact is well, let me just give you, I lead the Free Congress Foundation, and we have a project called AmericanOpportunity.org in which we're beginning to address some of these issues. We actually circulated a letter, Charlie. We were the ones that circulated the letter out of the Free Congress Foundation that complained about the Internal Revenue Service targeting existing conservative organizations. We have taken the lead on these issues. So you're not wrong, you're just not informed about what we're doing. But the fact is this, and this is very important. This is very important. You cannot disarm this country in a time of the maximum challenge to this nation. The fact is that we have a dual challenge in this country. We have people who are nation states who are operating against us with very sophisticated intelligence services. We also have people out there who are not connected to any state at all, like Al-Qaeda, who are working very hard to try to create an undermining of this nation. And by the way, under the new battles that are going on in fourth-generation warfare in the 21st century, you can attack the economy of this country, which is and civilians, and try to undermine people's faith in democracy. That is what we have to, that is the confrontation that is ahead of us. We as conservatives have an obligation to make sure that we do both of these things and that we do not set one against the other. We do not set the freedoms of the nations against the security of this nation. That is not the direction in which we must go. We, in fact, have to do both. That has been my record. That's the record of the Free Congress Foundation and American Opportunity, and that is what we must do.
I want to go to Charlie for a second. You can see the passion that this issue stirs in the crowd and in the country. Charlie, I want to talk about a story that we had in the Washington Times recently. It goes back many years ago, 1993. It turns out the FBI had a human asset directly attached to Osama bin Laden, having conversations with him and finding out very early on, 8 years before 9/11, that he intended to finance attacks in the United States. We rely a lot on technology today. Are you worried that we don't do enough of the old-fashioned intelligence, the sort of stuff that Governor Gilmore did when he was an Army intelligence officer, human intelligence? Is that concern you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's been this increased, try to use these supercomputers and technology to collect everything we possibly can instead of trying to do more, take a step back and try to find it in a more substantive, old traditional manner and how intelligence used to be. Now, of course, we should use the technology we have to the best of our ability, but still respect the Fourth Amendment rights and understand that we have to be increasingly hesitant of the overreach and continuing growth of government.
Governor, you managed, I'm sure, human assets when you were an intelligence officer. Are you worried that we've become too reliant on technology and not enough on the old-fashioned way of spying?
Well, the correct answer is that we have to do all of the above. We have to be prepared to use human intelligence if you can get it. It's not as simple as just going out and picking up a spy off the street someplace. It's quite a lengthy and hard job, sure, and sometimes not the most savory job, I must say. But you also, today in the modern world, have the opportunity today with modern technology. This is a modern technology world. This is a place where we're all connected, where we all have an opportunity to have communications. This is a chance to utilize the weaknesses that our enemies have to use in order to communicate. And this is a chance for us to do something like that, consistent with our values, consistent with our liberties, consistent with our freedoms. And we can do, so the point is, John, and audience, we don't dismantle the United States' defenses. We don't open ourselves up to attacks by people who, I promise you, want to attack us. I promise you. We don't open ourselves up to that. But you reform this, and you make sure that we stay consistent with the law, and you have proper oversight, and you demand that if people don't conduct oversight, that they are subject to the penalties of the criminal law. We have to make sure that we, in fact, have true oversight by the Congress, by people who are exposed to this, and people that we can hold accountable for oversight. That's what we have to do. That must be our mission. And Bruce is taking us in the wrong direction. He's taking this, demagoguery is not the answer in the United States. I don't care what you say. And, oh no, demagoguery is not going to be the answer. The answer is going to be a mature, reasonable approach where you preserve the information, you empower people to protect our citizens, and at the same time protect our liberties and our values. And you can do that through the law, oversight, and regulations, and through a democratic process that throws out people that don't do the job.
Bruce,
well, none of that was happening.
We got some great questions coming in from the audience, and I want to get to this because you're involved in one of them. Tell me a little about where you think the lawsuit that Senator Rand Paul that you were involved in is going to go. Where the court's going to come down on this in your estimation?
Well, I think ultimately the U.S. Supreme Court will find what the NSA is doing is unconstitutional, that the government is relying upon their key case concerned a few weeks collecting of phone numbers dialed by a criminal suspect who was allegedly harassing someone who they had plundered earlier. And they've taken that one case concerning a pen register which collects the numbers dialed, not even whether they're completed, targeting a suspected criminal to justify collecting metadata on every single American forever with no suspicion of any wrongdoing. And I think that's too far. 5 justices of the Supreme Court in 2012 indicated that they were inclined to be open to re-examining this Smith precedent, and I think that's ultimately where we're going. But I want to underscore, in the court's jurisprudence in all these kinds of areas, public opinion, our values as a culture are very important. And your votes about what Congress should do, about what state legislatures should do about privacy is critical to what the U.S. Supreme Court will be doing. And that's why your condemnation of what the NSA is doing, writing into Congress, making sure we get remedial legislation, is very, very important. The last thing I want to observe, I think that Governor Gilmore does not understand, is our greatest national asset in defense is the loyalty and patriotism of its citizens who love their government because the government doesn't treat them as potential terrorists without some cause. When the government believes all of us are traitors, that's the greatest danger, that they're going to lose the loyalty of the American people.
Governor, I saw you nod your head. I think you pretty understand that point, right?
Nonsense. The fact is that nobody thinks that the average American out there is unpatriotic. In fact, if you have a system in which, you actually focus on the enemies of this nation and you determine what they're trying to do to get at us and what we have to do in order to uncover those through investigative propositions and investigative methods, then this is an appropriate thing. But to blow this up and suggest that somehow there's some suggestion that all of us are under scrutiny or all of us are being suspected as potential traitors is nonsense demagoguery, and it's not helpful. It's not helpful to the discussion that we as conservatives have to have in order to find out how you, in fact, protect this nation and protect the defenses of this nation for ourselves and for our children and for the well-being of our people, and at the same time protect our values and our civil freedoms. These are the choices that we have to face, and these are the things that we have to do.
Governor, the NSA is collecting all telephony metadata on every call you've made since May 2006 in perpetuity. Why are they doing that if they don't suspect you of wrongdoing?
Because they want to be in a position to find out who the bad guys are talking to. Not to you, and not to you, and not to me. But we have to find out what people are doing, and that is the approach that has to be taken. But you can have perfect reasonable ways of governing this and controlling this and having proper oversight. The alternative is we're going to end up with more attacks like we saw at the Boston Marathon, and there are going to be calls for a greater security state and greater authoritarianism responses. And this we must not permit. We have to do the job in a correct way with proper oversight. And, frankly, demagoguery is not helpful. It actually slows up the ability to get to the goals that we need to achieve.
Charlie, let me ask we've heard a lot about oversight today. Do you think Congress has done a good job overseeing this entire program?
No, not at all.
I think you got some people agree with you out there?
Yeah, I don't think it's been clear, and I want to respond to one thing. And again, I hesitate to use these words bad guys, especially in the culture that we're in, because we as conservative are viewed as bad guys right now to this government. We are. And I want to, and with all possible due respect, I mean, think about it. If all the NSA has to do is just watch all the phone calls made from Cpac, then the IRS will have their audit scheduled for the next 5 years. And, I say that, kind of facetiously, but again, we are in a very unique culture where these branches of government are being weaponized against its dissidents. And the history of Western democracy shows when government continues to do this and target people that are dissidents against the government, we as the activists for limited government will soon be the targets of this, and we have to be very, very careful with this NSA.
Charlie, I love this thing called Twitter. As I'm scrolling through here, it looks like there's some people in the audience that want to know if you're available to date. I don't know if that's relevant to this panel, but they are showing up on Twitter, so good luck to you on that front. All right. I see a question here that I really like. If there's going to be this debate, if the courts are going to intervene, if Congress is going to get involved again, Senator Rand Paul clearly driving that discussion, is there a new middle spot that we can find here? Is there a place where we can collect some data from the NSA that you'd be comfortable with? And Governor Gilmore, you feel that we have enough to go after the bad guys?
Of course. The Fourth Amendment provides the justification for gathering data. There's probable cause to believe you're an agent of a foreign government, with probable cause to believe you're implicated or have information that's relevant to crime. That's how we did it for hundreds of years prior to the modern effort to try to create a surveillance state that's been utilized to prosecute cases. Indeed, most of the prosecutions, not all of them post 9/11, have been tried in criminal courts with the probable cause standard utilized to gather information and search warrants. And I think that demonstrates that we don't need these extraordinary measures in order to be safe and to have the rule of law prevail. That doesn't mean that there will never be any incident again. People said, well, the laws didn't work prior to 9/11, so we couldn't use them. That's like saying the laws against murder don't work because we have 17,000 murders each year, we prosecute murders, and yet we still have murders. No law is flawless. And it's not a criticism of the rule of law that laws, even against terrorism, occasionally may be violated like any other law.
Governor, you open to some changes here?
Absolutely. I think that there's nothing wrong with assessing the conduct of the NSA or any of the other authorities and determine whether they've gone too far. As I said at my opening statement, I, 10 years ago, condemned the whole concept of total information awareness because I was suspicious of how that could be misused in the future. But the fact is that we can, in fact, have an appropriate rule and regulations and oversight to make sure that we don't disarm this country. And by the way, bad guys, I know, Charlie, you kind of picked up on that and kind of gave me a little slap around because I said bad guys, but what we really mean here is people who are agents of foreign countries who may at some point actually conduct war with us. That can still happen. Or the realistic world that we live in, that people unconnected to states, people who are part of international organizations, whether they're drug organizations that are so corrupting the youth of this country, Charlie, or whether or not they're people who are in fact agents of international terror organizations that want to do away with all states and create some type of international caliphate. These are the kinds of people that we have to be prepared to meet in the 21st century. Now, we as Americans are going to be prepared to do that. We're going to be able to do it, but not because we take some demagogic view that somehow we're all paranoid and that we conservatives have an obligation to be paranoid and afraid and fearful. We're Americans. We are conservatives. We don't need to be afraid of anything. We can set the rules down in an appropriate way, demand that they be followed, demand that there be proper oversight, and protect this nation as well.
Charlie, thank you, Governor. Charlie, how old were you when 9/11 occurred?
I was in second grade.
First, second grade. So it's been about 12, 13 years now. Are you worried that in the passage of time that people become complacent, they forget the horrors that we experienced that day, one of the most cataclysmic events in our lifetime, and that as we move further along, some of what we see in the audience today is just euphoric reaction now, and that if there's another terror attack, this pendulum could swing back?
Absolutely. I mean, 9/11 woke up a lot of people that I've met in the conservative movement. I think Dana Lash being one of them, she said 9/11 was one of the reasons she got into politics. And kind of an example, my generation, the younger people, many of them, a majority, they don't even know the sacrifices the greatest generation gave in World War II. They forgot about that. They don't understand what that generation went through. And absolutely, I mean, we forget, and that's unfortunately the pendulum of history. That's the cycle and things go. And it's unfortunate, and the only way to truly correct that is through education and connecting with these people that gave the ultimate sacrifice so that we can enjoy these freedoms and liberties.
Well
John,
said.
I just
Go ahead, Bruce.
Yes, it is. With regard to all these particular agents of terrorist organizations, foreign governments that Governor Gilmore mentioned, they've been subject to search and surveillance under laws for 20-some years. There's nothing that I've said that would all disturb those authorities. It's based upon probable cause to believe you're acting as an agent for a government. Those are totally legitimate things. And it really isn't an argument to just throw the word demagogue along. You actually have to use reason there. And your repeated reference to demagoguery is not constructive to having the audience understand what we're debating.
No,
all right,
no.
All right,
John,
go ahead. We've got about a minute and a half. I want to get to a couple quick questions, but go ahead, Governor.
No, I think that we as conservatives have an obligation to understand the difference between legitimate concern, paranoia, and demagoguery. And we have to be prepared to accept the reasonable concerns that we've got with respect to a surveillance state. Now, as I said, I was governor during the 9/11 attack. I was the chairman of the National Commission on Homeland Security. And I was a person who, in writing, officially resisted the surveillance state and said that we should not go and give up our values in the name of some type of total security. And I'm on the record having said that. But there is a danger when you have a Rand Paul who says, well, a traitor like Edward Snowden should get a little slap on the wrist. Or the father who says perhaps we should have amnesty. Or the New York Times who says perhaps we should have amnesty. This undermines the legitimate trust that we place in people who have an obligation to meet those dedications to the security of this nation. And when that is violated, a person should stand before the bar of justice, allow Mr. Fein to defend him or any other lawyer that wants to, make his case, and let a jury of his peers decide what's right and what's wrong. That's the way we do things as Americans.
All right, Governor, thank you. Well, we run out of time here. I want to thank you all for an impassioned and intellectual debate, and I can tell from the audience that if you stick around, they're probably going to want to talk to you some more. So thanks again today. Really appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.